Detroit, August 17, 1973. An empty alleyway. A car parked in the dead silence. Inside that car is a man, dead. He is 34 years old, and he is wearing nothing but a pair of swimming trunks. Just swimming trunks. Let that sink in for a second. The police arrive. They take one look at the scene. They see a gun. They see 2 shell casings on the ground. 2. They see a liquor bottle dropped right there. They write it down. Suicide. Case closed. Move along. Nothing to see here. But hold on. Hold on a minute, you all. Do you know who that man in the alley was? That was Paul Williams, the founder of the Temptations, the heart, the soul, the absolute engine of the biggest vocal group in the entire United States of America. We are talking about music royalty. A man who shaped the sound of a generation. A man whose voice and vision built an empire that generated millions and millions of dollars. The architect of Motown. So here's the question we need to ask today. The question the industry desperately hopes you never ask. How does a king end up like that? How does the man who gave the world so much joy, so much rhythm, so much life, end up dying completely alone in an alleyway, stripped down to his swimming trunks with a bullet in his head? What really happened that night in Detroit? Was it really just a tragic suicide of a broken man? Or was it the final devastating result of a machine that chews up brilliant artists and spits them out when they stop making money? The official story is full of holes. The police report does not make sense, and the family of this man has spent decades fighting to uncover the truth. You think you know the Motown story? You think you know the glitz and the glamour? You have no idea. It is time to pull back the curtain. It is time to tell the real story of Paul Williams. Let us get straight into it right now. Birmingham, Alabama, the 1950s. Picture it. No money, no big stages, no recording contracts, just dust and heat and the reality of being black in the Deep South. But down there on those street corners, something was happening. 2 kids, singing their lungs out. Paul Williams and his best friend Eddie Kendricks. They did not have anything, but they had their voices, and they had a dream that was way bigger than the city limits of Birmingham. They were singing for pennies, singing for survival, singing because it was the only thing that made sense. But Paul was different. He was not just another guy with a good voice. Paul had vision. He saw the whole picture. When everyone else was just trying to hit the right notes, Paul was looking at how they stood, how they moved. He saw elegance. He saw style. He understood that you do not just sing a song, you perform it, you sell it, you make the audience feel it in their bones. He was the architect, the blueprint. He is the one who came up with the moves, the spins, the synchronized steps. Everything you think of when you picture a classic soul group. That was Paul Williams. He built that, out of thin air, from his own mind. But Birmingham was too small, the dream was too big. So they packed up, left the South behind, headed north, Detroit, Motor City, the promised land. But let me tell you something about Detroit. It does not hand out success for free. You have to bleed for it. You have to fight for it. And fight they did. They started from the absolute bottom. The darkest clubs, the smallest crowds. They formed a group, called themselves the Primes. They were grinding every single night, no sleep, barely eating, just pushing and pushing and pushing. Because Paul refused to fail. He was the anchor, the driving force. When the others wanted to quit, Paul kept them going. He knew they had something special. He knew they were building an empire with their bare hands. They were the underdog story you love to hear about, starting with $0 in their pockets and nothing but raw talent. They were singing in basements, rehearsing in alleyways, sweating through their shirts just to get one step closer to the door. Paul was designing the choreography in those cramped spaces, teaching the guys how to glide across the floor, how to command a room. He was creating magic in the shadows, setting the foundation for something that would change the world forever. And the world had no idea what was coming. Because the Primes were just the beginning, the seed, the spark. Paul Williams was standing on the edge of history, ready to kick the door wide open, ready to build the greatest vocal group of all time. Man, think about that determination. Think about that fire. That is the kind of spirit you cannot buy. You are born with it. And Paul had it in him from day one. Motown, the empire. Berry Gordy saw them. He knew exactly what he was looking at. The contract was signed. the ink dried, and the name changed. The primes were gone. The temptations were born. And y'all, they did not just walk into the industry, they kicked the door off the hinges. They took off like a rocket, straight to the top, the charts, the radio stations. Every single person in America knew their name. But here is the secret, the thing people forget when they talk about this group. Everyone talks about David Ruffin, right? They talk about his voice on My Girl. They talk about Eddie Kendrick singing those high notes. And yes, they were brilliant. But who was holding it all together? Who was the glue? Paul Williams. That is who. Paul was the man behind the magic. You see those spins, those smooth glides, that microphone toss? That was Paul. He choreographed every single move. He built the brand. He made the Temptations look like the coolest men on the planet. He taught them how to wear the suits, how to smile, how to move in perfect harmony. They were flawless, and the crowd lost their minds. Women screaming, men want to be them. Sold out shows across the country. The money started flowing in like a river. Millions of dollars. Billboard hits back to back to back. The Way You Do the Things You Do, My Girl, Ain't Too Proud to Beg. The hits just kept coming. They were unstoppable. They were on national television. The Ed Sullivan Show. The Copa. Everywhere you looked, there they were. The Temptations, kings of the world. And standing right there in the middle of it all was Paul. The boy from Birmingham who started with nothing. Now he had everything. He was a superstar. His voice was raw. It was powerful. When Paul sang Lead On For Once in My Life, he didn't just sing it. He bled it. He gave you his entire soul on that stage. People in the audience would cry. He had that kind of power, that kind of gravity. He was the anchor of the greatest group Motown ever produced. Man, it was a beautiful time. The pinnacle of success. They had the cars, the houses, the fame. Everything they ever dreamed about back on those dusty street corners in the South was finally theirs. But this is the music business, and the music business does not let you stay on top forever. The machine was running at full speed, and it needed fuel. It needed energy. It needed everything Paul had to give. They were working non-stop, recording, touring, performing, smiling for the cameras, a grueling schedule that would break a normal human being. But Paul kept pushing, because he was the foundation. If the foundation cracks, the whole house comes down. So he held it up. He carried the weight of the biggest group in the world on his shoulders. He made it look effortless. He made it look easy. But nothing is easy. The higher you climb, the harder the wind blows, and the wind was about to turn into a hurricane. The peak of the mountain is a dangerous place to stand. And Paul Williams was standing right on the edge of the cliff looking down. And the industry was standing right behind him, ready to take everything he built, ready to reap the harvest of his genius without giving him the credit he truly deserved. The rise was phenomenal. But the fall was coming. The media painted a picture. They always do. They called him a drunk. They said he was out of control, wasting his talent, throwing it all away. That was the narrative. It was easy to sell. The tragic star who could not handle the fame. But that was a lie. A vicious, ugly lie. Here's what they did not write about in the papers. Here's the truth they kept hidden. Sickle cell anemia, a brutal, unforgiving disease. It attacked his blood. It attacked his body. Imagine the worst pain you have ever felt. Now imagine feeling that every single day, every time you wake up, every time you try to breathe. That was Paul Williams. His body was literally breaking down from the inside out. He was in agony, constant, relentless agony. But did the machine care? Did the label say, hey, take a break, get some rest, heal yourself? No, absolutely not. The machine does not stop for pain. The machine only stops when the money stops. And the Temptations were making too much money. They had tours to finish, records to cut, television appearances to make. The schedule was brutal. It would crush a healthy man. And Paul was dying inside. So what do you do when the pain is screaming and you have to go out there and do a spin and a split for 10,000 screaming fans? You find a way to numb it. You find a way to survive. Paul turned to alcohol, not for a party, not for fun. It was medicine. It was the only thing that could turn down the volume on the agony in his veins. He drank so he could stand up. He drank so he could put on that suit and smile for the cameras. He was self-medicating just to keep the Motown engine running. He sacrificed his own body to keep the group on top. And how did the industry repay him? How did the labels show their gratitude for his blood, sweat, and tears? They brought in a man named Charlie Atkins. Now Charlie was a legend, a great choreographer. But you have to understand what this meant for Paul. Paul was the original architect. He built the Temptations brand. He created their physical identity. And the label just casually handed his job to someone else. They pushed him aside. They took his creation, his baby, and they gave it away. Imagine the psychological toll. Your body is failing you. You are in constant physical pain, and the people you made rich are slowly replacing you, erasing your fingerprints from the masterpiece you built. It destroyed him mentally. It broke his spirit. The depression set in, heavy and dark. He was trapped in a golden cage, surrounded by millions of fans, but completely and utterly alone. He was watching his own legacy slip through his fingers, and he could not do a single thing to stop it. Then came 1971, the breaking point. The body can only take so much abuse before it completely shuts down, a dark spot on his liver. The doctors looked at him and delivered the verdict. If you keep going, you will die. You have to stop, right now. So he had to step away. He had to leave the group he founded, the group he named, the group he built from the ground up. He walked away from the Temptations. And just like that, the spotlight moved on. The machine kept running. They found a replacement. They kept selling records. They kept touring the world. And Paul was left behind in the dust, a discarded part, tossed out when it was no longer useful. He gave them his youth. He gave them his health. He gave them his genius. And when he could not give any more, they simply replaced him. That is the reality of the business, y'all. It is cold. It is calculated. It is ruthless. But wait, it gets worse. Because when the spotlight fades, the money stops. But the bills do not. Paul tried to survive. He tried to set up a business, a celebrity boutique. He tried to pivot, to build something new. But it failed. The business went under. He was drowning in debt. And here is the part that will make your blood boil. The man who helped generate millions and millions of dollars for Motown was broke. He had nothing. He owed money everywhere. He was facing a divorce. His personal life was falling apart. His health was gone. His career was over. And the ultimate slap in the face. He owed $80,000 to the label. $80,000. You hear that? He owed money to the very same people who built their mansions on the foundation of his talent. The machine squeezed every drop of magic out of him and then handed him a bill. That is the ultimate betrayal. He was totally shattered. He went back to the studio in 1973. I tried to record some solo material, trying to find a way back, trying to breathe life into a dead dream. One of the last songs he ever recorded was titled, "Feel Like Giving Up, Feel Like Giving Up." Man, he was telling us exactly where his head was at. He was crying out for help, but nobody was listening. The industry had already moved on. They had their money. They did not need him anymore. Let us go back to that alleyway, that dark street in Detroit, August 1973. The police took one look at the scene and wrote it off as a suicide. But look closer. Look at the details they tried to ignore. Paul Williams was a right-handed man. He did everything with his right hand. But the fatal gunshot wound, it was on the left side of his head. Does that make sense to you, Bo? Right-handed man shooting himself on the left side. And the gun, the weapon found at the scene, had been fired twice. 2 bullets. Why would a man taking his own life fire 2 shots? It just does not add up. Then there was the liquor bottle. It was found lying near his left hand. It had dropped exactly as if he was holding it when someone else pulled the trigger. The police didn't care. They wanted a quick answer. A neat little package to close the case. A washed-up singer who could not handle the pressure. That was the story they sold to the public. But his family never bought it. His friends never bought it. They knew Paul. They knew he was fighting his demons, but they also knew things at that crime scene were terribly wrong. There were too many questions and absolutely no answers. The investigation was shut down before it even truly began. It was swept under the rug, forgotten, just another tragedy in a city full of them. But the tragedy did not stop when his heart stopped beating. The nightmare was just beginning for the people he left behind, because Paul died without a will. He was 34 years old. Nobody expects to die at 34. He did not have his affairs in order, and the moment he took his last breath, the machine sprang into action, not to help, not to support the grieving family, but to protect their own pockets. Motown. Records. The empire that Paul Williams helped build from the very first brick immediately cut off all royalty payments, just completely stopped them. They froze everything. Paul had sung lead on massive hits. He had choreographed the routines that defined the label. His voice was playing on the radio every single hour of every single day across the entire world. The money was still rolling in. The executives were still buying mansions. The label was still printing cash off the sweat and blood of Paul Williams. But his widow, his children, his family, they were left with absolutely nothing. Zero. The machine took his life and then it took his legacy. They locked the vault and threw away the key. Can you imagine the absolute cruelty of that reality? You turn on the television and see your father or your husband singing and dancing. You hear his voice echoing from cars driving down the street. The whole world is celebrating his genius, but you cannot afford to pay your own bills. You are struggling to survive while billionaires get richer off his name. That is the karma of the music industry. It is a system designed to exploit, a system built on the backs of brilliant artists who never get to own the very art they create. The family was devastated, but they did not just roll over and give up. They fought back. They went to war against a massive corporate giant. A fight for what was rightfully theirs. But fighting the music industry is like trying to fight an ocean. They have endless resources. They have armies of lawyers. They know how to delay. They know how to stall. They know how to starve you out until you have no fight left in you. Year after year passed. The 1970s ended. The 1980s began. The world moved on. Disco came and went. Pop music changed. But the Williams family was still trapped in a courtroom trying to get a fraction of the money that Paul had earned. It took 14 years. 14 long, grueling years of legal battles. Think about that time frame. 14 years of begging a corporation to pay you for the work your deceased family member already did. Finally, in 1987, the family won their battle. They finally secured the rights to his royalties. They finally got a piece of the pie that should have been theirs from the very beginning. But the damage was already done. The years of suffering could not be erased. The disrespect could not be unwritten. That is how the system works, y'all. It swallows you whole. It drains every ounce of magic from your soul. And when there is nothing left, it spits you out and leaves your family to pick up the broken pieces. It is a brutal and truly unforgiving machine. The history books might try to bury him today. The record labels might desperately want us to just forget his name entirely. They want you to only think about the glamorous suits and the polished smiles on television. But Paul Williams is not just a footnote in the history of Motown. He is the absolute brilliant soul of the entire 1960s. He is the blueprint. He is the singular reason those groups looked like pure magic on that stage. They took his health. They took his money. They took his peace of mind. But they can never, ever take away what he actually created. His genius is permanently stamped on the DNA of American music. You cannot erase it. You cannot hide it. It is there forever. So here is exactly what you need to do right now. Do not just hit the like button. Do not just scroll down to the next video. I want you to take a real moment and pay respect to a true pioneer. Right after this video ends, go straight to YouTube. Type in The Temptations' Don't Look Back. But do not just listen to the regular track. Find the isolated vocal version, the one where it is just his voice without the heavy production. Hit play, close your eyes tight, and really truly listen. Listen to the raw power. Listen to the pain. You will hear a man giving absolutely everything he has left inside of him. You will hear the scream of a completely broken heart pouring out through a lonely microphone. It is haunting. It is beautiful. It is the undeniable sound of a man who loved the music, even when the ruthless music industry did not love him back. He deserved so much better than what he ultimately got. A true, undisputed legend tossed aside by the very machine he built. Go listen to that incredible voice. Please remember his name today. Remember exactly what he built with his two bare hands. I am 34 years old. I'm only 34 years old. Rest in peace to Paul Williams, the immortal heart of Motown.